Okay. I assume you all recall the acrimonious paternity dispute that erupted between Mel B and Eddie Murphy after the latter denied being the father of Mel's child, Angel.
Recoiled when you heard Eddie Murphy again say those words in that interview, which were very hurtful, whatever the circumstances.
Well, of course, it's not a nice thing to hear. We were both to blame. I wouldn't have said that publicly, and he apologizes to this day about that, because that baby was planned. We planned that baby together, and we were madly in love. And it just went wrong.
Eddie Murphy didn't come to terms with the fact that this child was his for over 10 years. Additionally, it appeared that Eddie was making a concerted effort to make up for lost time by that point. However, their relationship has only become worse, and Angel just turned 18. He was allegedly never completely embraced by Eddie, particularly after he decided to transition. Although this was not on the 2025 bucket list, it sounds like something Eddie Murphy would do, don't you think? Since there is a lot to cover, let's simply get started.
Old school, we dated for a while, and by the way, I've never actually had a one-night stand. I haven't, believe that or not, I have not.
And your dad, he asked your dad for your hand in marriage?
Yeah, it was a very loving, safe, just loving relationship.
Were you all aware of the exact moment when Mel and Eddie began dating? Since he moved away from her and became extremely angry after she became pregnant, the majority of us learned that the two of them were together. Eddie's team issued a statement, even after the paternity suit was filed, stating that Mr. Murphy and Miss Brown dated very briefly and never made any plans of any sort. In addition to paying Miss Brown child support and covering her pregnancy costs, he accepts paternity of the child, Angel. According to Eddie Murphy's statements, people now assume that she became pregnant after the two of them merely had a brief affair. Some even accuse Mel B of essentially taking advantage of the situation to trap him to receive a check for the ensuing 18 years. To be honest, though, she was a member of the Spice Girls, one of the most well-known and successful girl groups ever. She wasn't acting for financial gain, in my opinion. Mel claims that when they first met in 2006, it was almost like love at first sight. In her memoir, Brutally Honest, she wrote of their first meeting, "It felt like a 2,000-volt electric charge had flowed between us. I had the impression that I had known this man my entire life, and I was looking into his face at my fate." They were practically always together, their relationship took off swiftly, and they even had each other's autographs inked at a Hollywood tattoo parlor on the tops of their thighs. Luckily for Mel, Eddie appeared to share her sentiments as he approached her father to ask for her hand in marriage and, shortly after, proposed to her. Mel had consistently insisted that it wasn't the case at all, despite Eddie's subsequent denial of their relationship and claim that there was no arrangement between them. Eddie did desire to have a child with her. He was the one who made her want to have another child, in fact. And I'm not sure, but I think Mel was right when she claimed that Eddie genuinely wanted them to have a child. Eddie Murphy is a person who likes to collect Pokemon cards of babies, kids, and moms. By the time he met Mel, he had already given birth to 7 children. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that he was eager for the 8th child. Eddie was the first to learn that Mel was finally expecting, and the two of them celebrated the news by crying and laughing together. Despite their apparent excitement over the arrival of their child, their relationship quickly improved. Mel claims that after learning that she was expecting, Eddie changed into a totally different person. Eddie was suddenly afraid that something would happen. Therefore, she was not allowed to leave the house as she had wanted to. Security was his constant obsession. And Mel's life with him soon changed from being a joyful and enjoyable experience to being confined to a gilded cage with Eddie as the key holder. Mel remained optimistic that his paranoia was merely related to the pregnancy and that things would return to normal as soon as she gave birth. However, nothing could have prepared her for the events that would transpire and the words that Eddie would utter. One of the reporters asked Eddie if he was thrilled about the kid while he was out conducting interviews. However, he stated, "I don't know whose child that is until it comes out and has a blood test," in contrast to the usual reaction one would anticipate from a soon-to-be father who wanted the child initially. Sir, you shouldn't draw judgments too quickly. Everyone believed that they were doing a great job together. Fans were therefore rather taken aback when he mentioned that. Mel was also quite distressed and hurt back home. She defended herself by claiming that the child was hers. After leaving his house.
Did you ever think possibly of not having the baby?
Absolutely not. This is a planned baby. This is something that we both sat down. Yeah, we both sat down and we discussed it. Listen, I have an 8-year-old. I'm not about to just have a baby by accident. I'm a very responsible parent. We both sat down and planned it, and yeah.
But you didn't plan to be married?
Yeah, we didn't make set in stone plans to be married. That we definitely spoke about it, and that was one of the things.
Were you in love with him?
Yeah. Why would you have a baby with somebody if you're not in love with them?
And Angel Murphy Brown was born 4 months later, on Eddie Murphy's birthday, no less. Mel formally sued Eddie Murphy in a paternity claim. Now, I'm not sure about the rest of you, but this kind of lawsuit is the kind that permanently destroys relationships. For example, how did you enter the world knowing that your father had already hinted that you might not be his and had fought with your mother for years because he truly didn't want to claim you as his child? After the case was over, the DNA test established that Andrew was, in fact, Eddie Murphy's daughter, and he was ordered to cover all of Mel's pregnancy-related medical costs as well as child support. Even after everything had been settled, Eddie still had no desire to interact with Angel. According to Eddie's account, Mel had treated him like a violin and was surprised to learn that he was pregnant. According to rumors, their relationship deteriorated to the point where Nicole Murphy, Eddie Murphy's ex-wife, had to intervene to defuse the conflict and pave the way for talks. After everything was said and done, Eddie was so over the situation that he was prepared to avoid Angel as long as it meant he wouldn't have to deal with Mel. Mel said at the time that Angel thought her ex-husband, Stephen Buffont, was her father, because he was so distant from her life. Additionally, Angel and Eddie didn't attempt a father-daughter relationship until Angel was a teenager. However, Angel had already become accustomed to living without him, so it was nearly too late. The fact that she was already starting the process of changing from female to male didn't help either. And it reportedly took Eddie some time to come to terms with the fact that his daughter lived as a transgender boy, which seriously strained their relationship. Do any of you recall when Eddie was stopped by the police in Los Angeles in 1997 when a transgender employee, called Shalimar, was in his vehicle? He said he was just giving her a ride at the time, but the headlines went viral. Eddie was the subject of severe public scrutiny when the tale made national headlines. Therefore, the hypocrisy is what made things worse. Eddie found it difficult to express genuine support when his own child came out as transgender years later. According to people familiar with the matter, Angel struggled to accept that her father had previously been a part of a public scandal involving a trans lady but had yet done anything to support his own child's transition. With all that has come to light, Eddie Murphy is being targeted for being Angel's father despite having no justification, and he was still unable to set aside his preconceptions in order to be a parent who supported her. I will always sneer at Eddie Murphy for not having Mel B's child. What a failure. Following his horribly transphobic actions, Eddie Murphy had a trans son. You are insane, universe. Eddie Murphy's refusal to acknowledge his daughter is the only thing about him that I dislike. He will always have to put up with it. However, what are your thoughts on this matter? Make sure to like and subscribe, and leave your opinions in the comments section. See you in the upcoming video.